Hey guys, welcome. Still figuring this Zoom stuff out, but how are you? It's Tuesday night, so welcome, Chef's Fantasy Chat. It's interesting. As we've been afforded the benefit of time, and with that, I say afforded, I mean that tongue in cheek, right? We'd all be rather be talking about baseball. But the fact of the matter is what this enables to do, us, at least me, to do is kind of slow down and really, put some thought into why we value things the way we value them, right? So I feel like, with all this discussion of the July 4th reintroduction of baseball, I feel like this is a great opportunity to kind of challenge some of our tiers, or how we have guys grouped. So I started last week. I did catching. I this week I'm going to do corner infielders, and I think it's fun to do this because um, not playing is kind of weird. It leaves us in this stagnant space where as a fantasy baseball player, you thrive for stats. That's what kind of drives your decisions, your all that stuff. But it's still gonna it's gonna come to pass that we're gonna play again. So really fine tuning your lists at this point is beneficial. Again, even if you don't play, when we do eventually come back up, we'll have a better idea of how we felt a certain way and why we did when all this went down. I certainly hope that it's true that we're able to play games on July 4th. You guys know me. This is it's tough. Oh shoot. Okay, perfect. Thank you, Andrew. Andrew has me worried. So first off, Chat's Fantasy Chat. Come to you on the Lenny Melnick Fantasy Sports Network at lennymelnickfantasysports.com. It's a great network of great people, my friends. But the important thing is if you go to that site, you can actually log in and ask your questions and really, specifically if you have something in regards to corner infielders, but just general questions as well. I don't want to share what kind of whiskey I drank in college or any of that stuff. I mean, I will, but I feel like we're here for baseball, right? So, if you haven't already, go to the website, sign up. You can sign as a guest; it's free. But really have the best minds in the business in the website right now. Thank you, Lenny and Andrea. I see you both in there. Um, as you guys come on, Dave Craig, awesome, Malpow. Thank you guys for being here. I really appreciate your support through this tough time, right? But there are things to be positive about. There are things to discuss, and sometimes it's hard to see. It's hard to be creative, right? But I think it's this is a fun conversation for me because y'all know everybody in this room knows that I like to make my lists. I like to sit there and analyze statistics, where there's maybe opportunity for growth, where maybe it's an anomaly and it was we have a little too much value on a player. But establishing tiers and fine tuning and refining those tiers through this time is important because you bet your butt a lot of players that are going to be itching to play when they come back up haven't done a damn thing. So preparing now is going to go a long way towards your success down the road. Okay. But before we talk about corner infielders, I want to make sure that I pay tribute because unlike any other sports, in my opinion, I'm a history guy, right? My degree's in history, and I really kind of pay homage to the numbers as we're going through this, and I feel like it's something that growing up, I'm a little older, I'm 45, but growing up, there was always this prestige, this cloud around these certain numbers in baseball. The numbers that'll never be broken, right? Whether it's Oral Hershiser's scoreless inning streak, or Joe DiMaggio's hit streak, or at the time Hank Aaron's home run record, right? I think it's really important to Trader Jim. Welcome. welcome. Malpal, welcome. Guest Gustavo, welcome. Love to see guests. If you want, identify yourself. If not, that's cool. I get, being rogue these days. but welcome to all. So really appreciate y'all showing up. And again, as you have questions, let's go through this. But the player that I really want to pay tribute to, and I feel like this is a guy. And as I go through this, I'm going to try and do it by position when I do it. I lump this guy in at this position, but I really do feel like he's one of those transcendent players. He's the gold standard of our current player pool. So if I told you guys, and we have an astute group here, I know Malpal and Lenny, Dave, all these guys. If I told you guys we have a player playing who currently is the active leader in hits, homers, RBIs, and runs scored, who's that player? So it's fun because as you go through these, again, by position, you start looking at history. The first thing that comes to mind is you start thinking about the impact of these guys. And as a corner infielder, no, it's not Miggy. Dave Craig nailed it right on cue. Albert Pujols. So Andrea, you bring an interesting name to the table because as I'm going through this, for comparison's sake, you're looking at about a 2 to 3 year difference between Pujols' stats and Cabrera's stats. Everything that I am getting ready to share with you about Pujols, you could probably say about Cabrera in about 2 years because he is number 2 in every single one of these categories. But again, I think it's important to pay homage. Players that come to mind when you think about corner infielders that have had historically big numbers, right? The first player I always think about it is Joey Votto. 284 homers. One of the most astute and disciplined hitters I've seen. I'll tell you, if you never got a chance to see Joey Votto go and take batting practice before the game, it is an absolute treat. But he falls short of this category, right? Ryan Braun is another guy who comes to mind. 344 homers. At E5, Edwin Encarnacion, 414 homers. This is a big power number category, right? But they all pale in comparison when you're talking about these big two players. Miguel Cabrera, 477 homers. But more importantly, so growing up, it's funny. I'm going to show a little bit of my age. Growing up, it was always Ruth Aaron 755, Ruth 715, May 660. Those were always the big numbers, right? And the 660 number was always the number that met your in rarefied air. Okay, so I know with bonds and some other things have come about, it's kind of changed those a little bit. But again, I say this for perspective. We are going to play baseball at some point. I'm going to assume that Albert Pujols is going to continue to play. Albert Pujols currently has 656 career home runs. He needs 4 more homers to tie Willie Mays and 5 to pass him for 5th all time. Now, that in and of itself says a bunch about this guy. Now, he's been in the league for 19 years. This guy is not like, but that's the thing. Aaron played forever as well, right? So to get to this group, you have to play for a long time. Pujols has been consistent his entire career. So on the home run numbers alone, you're talking about really, really elite air. But when you start to filter in some of these other statistics, it kind of paints a complete picture about who this player was and his consistency throughout his career. Okay? So Pujols currently needs 11 RBIs to move into third place all time. The only players in front of Albert Pujols in RBIs in the history of baseball are Aaron, Ruth, and A-Rod is third. So you'd think 11 RBIs is not that tall of a hurdle for him. You'd think about a month into the season, if he's healthy, Pujols will move over into third place all-time in the RBI category. So you're talking about fifth all-time, potentially, at homer, third all-time in RBI. He's one run behind Frank Robinson to take over 17th place in runs. And he's 113 total bases away from the number 4 all-time spot in total bases. The names on that list in front of him. So total bases for you novices. I don't think there's any novices in here, but it's the accumulation of a singles 1, a doubles 2, a triples 3, a homers 4. So it's cumulative. He's number 4 total all time in total bases. The names in front of him: Barry Bonds in 4th place, who he's chasing, Hank Aaron, Stan the Man Musial, and Willie Mays. Have we given this guy his just due? He has lost some mouth power, but really, I'm going to get to that. Even in his lost some mode, he's been a productive player. Here's the thing. Here's the thing about Albert Pujols that you have to keep in account. He's had a 19-year career. Just a guess. How many times has he hit 40 homers in that 19 years? How many times did he hit 30 homers in that 19 years? NYC to RVA, welcome. Thanks for coming. I hate dead air, so I don't want. This is the thing that shocked me when you go back and you start breaking down his entire career. Okay? No, Andy, but I understand where you're coming from because he's been terribly consistent, right? He's hit 40 homers 7 times in his 19-year career. 40 homers. And he's hit 30 homers 14 times out of 19. As a matter of fact, he drove in 100 runs in each of his first 10 years and in 14 of 19 years. He eclipsed 130 runs 3 different times, and he went over 126 times. 10 straight. Yes, his numbers in St. Louis were absolutely asinine. And I'm going to get to that in a minute. But I think it's important because, as Malpal stated, yes, he's had a tremendous drop-off in LA. He took about a 50-point dip in average, but he still put up a pretty good floor. Even taking that hit in average, it hasn't been as bad as we've maybe perceived. His first 11 years in St. Louis, there's a reason he got a nickname of the Machine, right? This guy has been one of the most consistent offensive threats in the game for 2 decades. So, it's funny when you've played for as long as Pujols has. The one thing that kind of came up, you're going to get good stats and bad stats, right? So he's grounded into more double plays than anyone in the history of the game with 395. That's the bad. But here's the good, and there's plenty of good. Again, this guy leads basically every category in active players. And I want to make this point. Mickey's number 2 in each of these categories. I want to go over it. The active hits leader, 3,202 hits. He has 383 more hits than the next closest guy. He's the only active 3,000 hit player. Miggy's second at 2,815. He's the only major leaguer with 2,000 RBIs. He has 379 more than Cabrera, who's second. He's the active runs scored leader. He's got 399 more runs than the next closest guy. He has 1,828, and Miggy has 1,429. See a pattern? Pujols and Miggy in every one of these categories that us as fantasy baseball players care about. And I'm going to get to my point before I move into these stats on the quarter infielders. But I do think it's important to pay homage to this guy, right? Because we're all living in the moment. But this guy has been one of the most consistent models in the modern era. And there's no doubt about that, right? So those of you that see me drinking out of two different glasses, I'm finishing 2 bottles. So I am actually drinking this right here is Johnny Drum. The other one's Russell's Reserve. They're both equally delicious. It's sad to see them go, but I'm looking forward to getting a new bottle for next week. The awesome thing about Pujols is when you go back and you start breaking down St. Louis versus LA. Guys, do you realize he, again, 11 years in St. Louis. He hit 328 in 11 years in St. Louis. He hit 328 during the course of an 11-year period in St. Louis. 328, Albert Pujols. That to me was astonishing. He hit 445 homers over the course of an 11-year career. That averages out to 40.45 homers a year for a decade. And he hit 328. He hit 359 as a 23-year-old, and he didn't hit below 312 during the course of his 20s. His bat average in St. Louis came at 299 as a 31-year-old his last year there. Pretty friggin' impressive, right? His average dropped 50 points when he left St. Louis. But don't read too much into that because he's still been a damn effective player for the Angels. Just a different player. All right? In LA, he hit 258. He's got 11 homers. He's got 746 RBIs. He's only hit under 20 homers 2 times in those 8 years, and he hit over 30 3 times. So he's had a good year there. A good career there. And in all honesty, last year, the last 3 years have been pretty good for Pujols. But last year, 244 with 23 homers and 93 RBIs out of a 39-year-old player, I'll take that. One more point about Pujols. Think about what the Angels have built quietly. The middle of that lineup, you're looking at, I know this is kind of a little bit touchy, but Adele/Marsh, future, Trout, Ohtani, current, and Pujols, past. This is a really dynamic offense. And I think that putting him in that offense, there's a lot of room for him to have some good success again this year. And chasing all these statistics, all of these really gaudy numbers, puts him in a position to have some motivation. I know I would, right? So, again, I wanted to take a second and I wanted to pay tribute to this guy because he literally leads every fantasy baseball relevant category for the most part throughout the course of his career. We're watching a living legend currently. So let's talk. Okay, 20 minutes in, Chap's Fantasy Chat on the Lenny Melnick Fantasy Sports Network at LennyMelnickFantasySports.com. You can go to that website and you can sign in. You can interact with Lenny Melnick, Andrea Lamont, a lot of great, knowledgeable baseball people in there. I see Dave Craig, you're in there. Mount Powell, thank you guys for coming in. I really appreciate the support. We are going to play baseball, and it might be only a couple days, but the best part about this is preparing for it. So let's talk about and refine these categories so that, as soon as they announce that they're going to play, and they are going to announce that, people are going to want to start new leagues. So why not like really drill down on this and make this really say what you want. So let's talk about our corner infielders. And I like dropping them into buckets like this because it kind of shows you where the depth is: first versus third, second versus shorts. But there's some real talent at this position, and I think it's important to make small distinctions on who we like. And you'll see that pretty early on here. Okay. So I'm going to go through this. I'll go through it fast until it's time to break it down granularly. Then I'll slow down. The definite number one at this position is Cody Bellinger. His ADP is 4, so he's solidified as a first round pick. And again, I do this. I don't do this strictly off of ADP because I think there's some real serious flaws when you look at even the best ADPs. I like to use it as a guide, but it's not the end all be all. Okay, so you're going to see a couple of these guys. That Andrew, if you could help Mal Pal, that'd be awesome. He's having trouble getting video and chat room. So again, this is a growing thing for us. We're all really kind of learning this, so bear with us as we work through the kinks. I feel like maybe we've done a pretty good job the last couple of weeks, hopefully. But so back on task. Cody Bellinger, I love that he's outfield first base eligible. He actually had 15 stolen bases last year, which is tied for third among the category among corner infielders. He hit 305 with 47 homers and 121 runs and 115 RBIs. Guys, he's in the top 10 in all those categories at the position. So really, it's deserved and appropriate. He's definitely a first half of the first round type of guy. And I like that you can kind of play him in multiple positions. So I like him. There are 2 other guys in the first round era, and Nolan Arenado is at 10.2, and Alex Bregman is at 11.8. Those 3 guys are your clear first rounders, and that's the order I've chosen. Bregman's average is a little lower. It's not in the top 10 among the category, among the corner infielders, and Arenado's runs aren't among the top 10 in the category leaders either. So those guys are, while they're both really good ball players, I do this list for a reason, and I want to accentuate players for a reason. So you have the 3 first rounders. If I don't get Bellinger, I'm probably not going to invest in. Again, if I don't get Bellinger, I'm probably not going to invest in Arenado or Bregman. I might save that, draft a pitcher or a speed guy, and then turn back around and do the guy that I like actually 4th best among this category. And those of you that have listened to me at any length know that I really love Rafael Devers. Actually, I invite him to my show tonight. He actually friended me on Facebook. I don't think he's here. Maybe he's guest Leon. I don't know. But the Devers really at ADP 25. That's easy math. That's the first pick of the third round. Um, I feel like I feel like this guy has everything pointing in the right direction. 311 last year, seventh among the position in average, 32 homers, 129 runs, led all corner infielders, which is when I do these shows, I establish these bars. Corner infielders aren't really well known for runs, so the fact that he's actually second in the majors and runs last year behind Mookie Betts, his teammate, so that's a big advantage in my mind that he does play a lot of runs, and that comes from hitting second a lot last year. We'll talk about that in a little bit, but led the corner position and runs scored. And I don't think that's something that you should necessarily take lightly. I think Devers at 3.1 in a 12-person league is a tremendous value. Okay. And a lot of it has to do with that runs number. Hitting at the top of that lineup, a very potent lineup, speaks well for Devers. 115 RBIs, tied for 8th among the leaders, and 8 stolen bases. Just enough to kind of, hey, Vic, what's up, brother? Thanks for coming, man. Just, 8 stolen bases is just enough for you to take notice, because this isn't a big speed position. And the fact that Devers was able to do that, now he got caught stealing a bunch. I love Verdugo. I've loved Verdugo for a while, and that's, I really think that he is a bright spot for the future of the Red Sox. I think that was a good trade because they weren't going to sign Mookie long term anyway. You may as well get a kid like that and watch him grow. Is the video working? I hope it is. Let me know. It's funny trying to interpret this stuff on video chat, but so I'll wait for that. Pinch the video isn't working anymore. Let me know, guys. So I love Devers, and I did this on purpose. Thank you. Awesome. Thank you, Andrew. All is great. I look beautiful. I look 10 years younger, right? I make these lists without the ADP, and then I add the ADP in. I think it's interesting because I put Devers in front of these next two guys, even though their ADP is higher. But I did so because I think they're trending in different directions. While Devers is distinctly trending up, Anthony Rendon's ADP is 20, so that puts him in the second round. Oh, I like Rendon. I have him in front of players that are rated higher, but I just value Devers more. So again, 319, he's 29 years old. That's the difference. He's 29 years old. He hit 34 homers last year, 117 runs, and 126 RBIs, which led corner infielders in RBIs. Significant. He had 5 stolen bases. All of those things are good things. And again, 5th overall at the position ain't bad. So, again, when it comes down to it, though, I will take a 23-year-old with an established floor over a 29-year-old who changed teams, changed leagues, changed coasts, changed coaches, changed thought processes. I'm not saying I don't like Rendon. I think it's a great fit for him. But you're foolish if you don't think there's going to be an adjustment period for hitting in a new lineup, for hitting in a new thought process, trying to protect players. You got bigger stars in that lineup than he had in Washington. I value Devers over Rendon for that reason. I love Rendon, Andrea. I do. I think it's important when we make these lists to establish who we like over whom. Because if you just go off of ADP, which 99.9% of the people out there will, Rendon's a no-brainer over Devers. Freeman's a no-brainer over both of those guys. I have him below both of those guys. Freeman's 30. There were some injury concerns coming into the season. I'm imagining he's gotten those taken care of at this point. He hit 295 last year, 38 homers, 6th among the position, 113 runs, 5th among the position, and 121 RBIs, 3rd among the position. The point here is when you're looking at a position as a whole, and you know a weakness is runs and stolen bases, and you can get even a few extra at a value, it's a slam dunk. It's a grand slam. It's a no-brainer. That's why Devers has 8 stolen bases. Devers in his 129 runs goes above those other two, in my opinion. I'm not saying I don't like Freeman. I'm not saying I don't like Rendon. But at 16.8, you're talking about a high second-round pick for Freeman. And at 20, you're talking about a mid-second-round pick for Rendon. Why not hold off and get Devers in the 3rd? And have that bonus with runs. Have that. You still have a high aptitude for average. You still have a high ceiling for RBIs. And you got those stolen bases. That's why it's important. That's why it's important to do these. So instead of squandering a second-round pick on a corner infielder, if you're at the top of the 3rd round, invest in Devers. The next guy, and this is the point of this conversation, because when you're ranking players, so settle this down a little bit, right? So we're talking about first baseman. We've got Bellinger. We've got Freeman. Who's number 3 at first base? I'll give you some names. Alonso, LeMahieu, Rizzo, Abreu, Muncy, or is it Matt Olson? You guys know me. You guys know I love Matt Olson. But here's the thing that I want to drive home here. And I've said this before. His ADP. I love Rizzo. But I'm not invested highly in him. He has back spasms every freaking year. Olson last year, again, Olson versus Rizzo. Olson is a 61.6. Rizzo's a 57.4. They're the same value. Who has the bigger upside? The bigger upside to me is the guy who missed 35 games last year and still hit 36 homers. He had 2 less homers than Freddie Freeman. The average is a little lower. I'll give it to you. But last year, dude hit, what the heck is that? Damn it. Sorry. As I go through my own meltdown. Last year, during July and August, there it is. Last year, during July, he hit 283. And in August, he hit 297. So he's shown extended periods of time in that 280 batting average range. And again, he got hit on the wrist last year. It was supposed to sap his power. He missed 35 games and still hit 36 homers. He had 91 RBIs last year, missing a month of the season. Guys, I know you hate this, but I want to project this out because I think it's important. 36 homers projects out to 46 homers. Whatever I just said his RBIs were, project out to 106 RBIs. You look at him in that lineup, Laureano, Semien, Chapman, resurgence of Chris Davis. This guy is sneaky, and you could get him in the 5th round. I value him every bit as much as Freddie Freeman, who's going in the 2nd round, as much as Pete Alonso, who's going in the 3rd round. Way more than DJ LeMahieu. Way more. Who's going at 57, 5 picks higher. And I like LeMahieu, don't get me wrong. He's never going to hit 50 homers. He's never going to drive in 120. Matt Olson is. It's just a matter of time. How about Pete Alonso? I have him at 8th. And I'll tell you, the only drawback of Pete Alonso, you look at his numbers last year, 260, 53 homers, led all the corners and homers, 103 runs, 120 RBIs, 4th in the position. He's 25 years old. I look for him to have negative regression in all of those numbers. I'm not saying I don't like him. I don't think he's a 260. I don't think he hits 50 homers in a silo. I know we're going to be shortened. The RBIs, I think, are granted. He's going to be in the middle of that lineup, and the Mets are going to score some runs. I do think that number maintains, again, in a prorated situation. But I think that 3rd round moniker, when you're really thinking about it, and again, when you put Devers and Alonso together, they're 1 ADP point off. I just value Devers and where he's going versus maybe the league adjusting to Alonso a little bit. If he slides, I'll take him. I do think he'll put up big numbers. I don't think he's going to lead the league in homers again. DJ LeMahieu, number 9. The thing I like about LeMahieu, he's disciplined. He's not flashy. He's played in a really good park for him. There's not a lot of pressure on him. He's got great position eligibility at 1st, 2nd, and 3rd. He hit 327 last year for the Yankees. That's 2nd among the position, which is not to be scoffed at. 26 homers speaks to the favorability of Yankee Stadium. 109 runs, 7th among the position. I think is an underrated statistic for him. 102 RBIs, again above the Mendoza line for, this is a position where you don't want to skimp on your RBIs. 102 RBIs doesn't hurt you, right? And 5 stolen bases, not bad out of the corner position. The last 3 in this category, I'm going to kind of skim over, but I think there's a tremendous amount of talent here. They all have a very interesting skill set and room to grow. Chris Bryant at 28 years old, his ADP is 45. He's 3rd base and outfield eligible. 282, 31 homers, 108 runs. Looking at batting leadoff for the Cubs this year, which speaks well to that runs scenario. You're talking about a former MVP. So Bryant at 45, I think, could be a value. There's just a little bit of risk there. I do have him in this top tier. Matt Chapman, I have higher than most. At 27 years old, 36 homers. 249 needs to come up, but he's shown the ability to hit around 270, 280. So, again, hopefully that's something that he can grow into. But his power numbers alone, him and Olsen team up for quite a powerful duo in the middle of that lineup. So I like what Chapman brings to the table. And the last guy, Eugenio Suarez. He's the first corner infielder one, if you will. And that's kind of how I do it, right? So you're in a 12-team league. You got 12 corner infielders. Suarez currently is a 75 ADP. I love this guy. I've loved him for a long time. I love him a long time. But no, in all seriousness, you look at his numbers and you look at that park and you really have to kind of drool a little bit at what he brings to the table. 271 average, but again, he's another one of those guys that has shown long spurts of the 280 type potential. So that might go up. But the 49 homers, second among the position, really Great American Ballpark. I've been to it now 2 times. It's a fun park to go to because it's right on that river and the ball flies out of there. So 49 homers is, I think there's room for more in that bat with Suarez, especially with the protection around him. But you know, he missed some time last year, 87 runs and 103 RBIs. This guy's a 120 run driven in type guy. I really do believe that with the added potential in that lineup, Suarez is worthy of a top 12 at this category investment. So again, 75, you're looking at what, a 7th round pick. I love him in the 7th round. If you can get a guy, the prodigious power of a Eugenio Suarez in the 7th round, I am all over it, right? So moving into the second tier guy, what do you guys think about that first tier? Pretty on? Am I way off on any of these guys? I see George is on there. Wait. Trader Jim talking about Evan White. I'll tell you, I do like Evan White, but I have a player that I'll see your Evan White, and I'll raise you a player in a little bit. So once I get past this next tier, I want to start talking about some of these young players and where it's worthwhile taking an investment, right? And this player was alluded to, so it's an interesting conversation, right? Because first base isn't one of those positions where you get these highly touted prospects normally. Speaking of, let's get into this second group of players. These are the types of guys that are going to help your team, but they're maybe not as notable as that first grouping of players. There's still a lot of talent here. There's still high investment in these guys. But again, that's why it's important to talk about these guys and make a distinction between who you prefer. The first player I want to talk about, ADP of 57, Manny Machado. He's 27 years old, shortstop and third base eligible. 256 last year. As he moved from the American League to the National League, from the East Coast to the West Coast. That's a big adjustment, right? And in a number of different ways. 32 homers, 81 runs, 85 RBIs, and 5 stolen bases. He is it's tough to live up to the potential that he was given in the offseason last year. But, I think for all accounts and purposes, he did that. The 256 could be higher, but the rest of those numbers are serviceable. And as 27-year-old, I look for him to be able to continue to establish big power numbers, big RBI numbers, and serviceable runs numbers for the Padres this year and for the future. So at 57.6, he's my first true tier 2 corner infielder. I like him again because you could play him at shortstop, which is really deep this year. But fact is when you can get a prolific bat like that and put it at shortstop, if I were to draft Machado, that's where I'd put him personally. The next guy, again, he's also ADP of 57. Anthony Rizzo, we talked a little bit about earlier. The reason why I like Olsen over Rizzo so much. Rizzo's 30 years old. He's missed a large portion of time over the last handful of years with back spasms. I don't foresee that not happening with him. That said, 293, 27 homers, 89 runs, 94 RBIs, even 5 stolen bases are all contributing numbers. I just worry about that month or so where you're going to have to find someone else with Anthony Rizzo. And that's why I've kind of bumped him down just a bit. Next guy, the first guy I really want to talk about in this tier. This guy was an uber prospect. He was the next big thing out of Cuba. Last year, he kind of was shifted from second base to third base, where he flourished. He was given a spot in the lineup. They put him at second, and he came through with flying colors. I'm talking about Yoan Moncada. At just 24 years old, he's only third base eligible this year. But again, his ADP is 69, which means a sixth round pick. Guys, he hit 315 last year, tied for fifth among the category, among the position at that category. 25 homers, 83 runs, 79 RBIs, and 10 stolen bases. The 10 stolen bases is important because that's a contributor. That's double digit. You're talking about a floor there with him. I think you can kind of go up to 15 with Moncada as he gets comfortable in his major league skin. He is just 24 years old. So there's room for growth with this young man. Again, he was the next big thing coming out of Cuba. I have no reason to believe that he doesn't take an additional step forward. A 300 plus batting average with 30 to 35 homers and 15 stolen bases out of Moncada is not out of the realm of possibility. Add in the fact that they've bolstered their lineup. They've brought in players like Mazzara, Encarnacion, Grandal, Robert. This guy will be protected. And in all honesty, you're looking at a top 50 player next year if he's just able to go out and do what he did last year. $69.2 for Moncada. The next guy I put up a little higher, Eduardo Escobar at 111 ADP. The thing about Escobar is he's a little bit of a crapshoot because he's not been the consistent player at the major league level. But if you look at last year's stats on their own and you let them stand for themselves, he had 269. He had 35 homers last year, 94 runs, and 118 RBIs. He had 5 stolen bases. He's second base and third base eligible. And you could get him in the 9th round. He's still going to be hitting in the middle of the Diamondback lineup, which has been bolstered with the addition of Starling Marte. Guys, at 118. And I'll tell you, I love doing this because then you'll see why I did it when I get to this next guy. Is he not every bit as valuable? Every bit as valuable as a guy like Jose Ramirez. So Jose Ramirez, and this kind of caught me off guard because, Fantasy Pros updates their ADP like weekly. Jose Ramirez has an ADP of 18.6, a second round pick. I just don't see it. Now, I get that he had 24 stolen bases. I get that that's important. I get that he has this perception of elites, being in the elite class of the MLB. But the fact of the matter is that the thing you cannot brush aside with Jose Ramirez is those long droughts of a lack of production. I will not draft Ramirez anywhere near, obviously, the second round. But I won't draft him out of all of these safe players above him. The top 16 players in this category, I won't draft him above those guys, because you have these lapses of production that you just can't have out of a corner infield position. The one saving grace of Ramirez last year is when he wasn't producing, he was still stealing bases. He had 24 of them. He led the corner position with stolen bases. But you just can't go for weeks on end without any production on him. In my opinion, not at a second round pick. Not when you're talking about talent levels of Devers, Rendon, Freeman, Olson. These guys, these guys are going to produce. I don't know how you can put these guys. Even these guys in the second tier, Machado, Rizzo, Moncada. These guys are going to give you a certain floor. You just don't have that with Ramirez. Okay, and again, it's tough slotting a guy like that in, right? Because where do you drop him to? For instance, the next guy I love, Jose Abreu. At 33 years old, his ADP is 74. But he's an RBI machine. He had this. I totally agree, Malpal. I'll talk about that. Remind me, Trader Jim, remind me about that because personally, and I'm in the Lenny school of thought here. I think Marsh is greater than Adele. I like Adele. I think that, but I just haven't seen. It's not like with Robert, where you've seen this track record of him dominating his league, his level. I haven't seen that out of Adele. So for me, I value Marsh over Adele just because of what he's been able to produce. Okay, so that's my answer. I think Brian Goodwin's a placeholder. I think Brandon Marsh takes over where Joe Adele was supposed to. That's me. I agree with Andrea. I don't think he's ready. I think he has to show me about a month and a half worth of consistent output before he gets to the majors. I think Marsh is ready. So I think you'll see Marsh before you see Adele. But you might have to put up with that crap in Brian Goodwin for about a month of the season. Okay? The next guy who I really want to talk about, we're talking at number 19 of position. Again, the corner infield is really deep. Okay. So that's why if you can get one of those top tier guys, great. But you can wait. I love this year. His ADP is 70.8, Max Muncy. And really, when you're looking at this guy, he's one of the underrated guys that kind of gets lost in the shuffle in this truly loaded Dodger lineup. But you're talking about a 6th round pick investment in Muncy. Dave, this is the Dodger I was talking about. My good friend Dave Craig's a diehard Dodger fan. I told him to tune in last week. I was talking about 3 Dodgers and told him I was only talking about 1 this week, but this is the guy. And I'll tell you, the thing I like about Muncy is he's been really consistent in that he's hitting in the middle of the Dodger lineup. He hits 2 or 5. Sorry. Yeah. And the 2 hole, he hit 250 with 14 homers and 50 runs in 58 games. And in the 5 hole, he hit 242 with 13 homers and 34 RBIs in 44 games. So he likes it in both of those spots. Both of those spots kind of give you a completely different outlook on what your lineup card in front of you and behind you is going to do, right? So if you're hitting the 2 hole, you're going to be in a position to score a lot more runs. If you're hitting the 5 hole, you're going to drive in a lot more runs. So it speaks well to evening out his runs and RBI ratio. But the thing I like the most about Muncy is he doesn't kill you with his average, but he gives you, mid 30 homers pretty consistently. He has a potential to give you 100 runs and 100 RBIs. And the addition of Mookie Betts to that lineup really kind of adds to his profile in my mind because there's going to be more people in front of him, or he'll get driven in more because that prolific offensive prowess is right there, challenging the pitcher, right? So I love Max Muncy at a 6th round pick. There's guys in the Dodger lineup that are going to get drafted a lot higher. Betts and Bellinger come to mind right off the bat. But after those two guys, Seager and Muncie, I think are pretty good values. You got to spend capital to get Betts. You got to spend capital to get Bellinger. Muncie, you can get at a relative value, right? So again, at 29 years old, I think that's a good investment. Donaldson, number 20, 92.4 ADP. You gotta like him in this Minnesota situation. 37 homers last year for the Braves. Minnesota likes to hit the ball, so you gotta like where he's gonna be positioned in that lineup. 34 years old, a little old for a hitter, which is why I have him a little bit lower. But really, his track record speaks for itself. Mike Moustakas, guys, again, you gotta love the Moose in Cincinnati. At 31, his ADP is 98. 35 homers, 80 runs, and 87 RBIs last year. He's second and third base eligible. You'd have to think he's going to be a predominant second baseman in Cincinnati with Suarez there. But man, that park just plays to his strengths. His power is pretty established, and he's comfortable in what he is. So I really like Moustakas. I think at a 98 ADP, he is a value, and again speaks to the depth of this position. All right, now I'm going to piss some people off, I'm quite sure. The next guy, the 22nd player at the corner infield position, Vladimir Guerrero Jr. Dave Craig. His statistics last year as a 21-year-old stand on their own. But then you start building the story around him. And this just speaks to the great depth at this position. His ADP is ridiculously high. You can get him, you have to spend 40 draft positions higher on Vladimir Guerrero than you do Mike Moustakas, than you do Josh Donaldson. Again, this is a lot of projection when you're looking at Vladimir Guerrero. And I'm not saying it's not valid. Okay? Let's get that out of the way right now. Again, 272, 15 homers, 52 runs, 69 RBIs as a 21-year-old. The potential is there. The potential is there. He just has to show me first. Before I'm willing to put him higher on this list, there are just too many established ballers on this list for me to put him any higher. And that's the other part of it, Andrea. It's a good point. The discipline of staying in shape, the discipline of him keeping the weight off to be able to play defensively at third base, the value is vastly different if he becomes a DH only versus him playing third base. That's very important. That's something to keep an eye on this coming year. Okay. And to kind of show you guys that I try not to be biased. This next guy is, I love Josh Bell. His ADP is 83.6. I have him as my 23rd corner infielder. That might surprise some of you guys. But again, it comes down to opportunity. It comes down to what you're surrounding yourself with. Josh Bell hit 277 last year. He hit 37 homers, 94 runs, 116 RBIs. I love Josh Bell, but if you're not going to protect him, he's not going to be able to do much. And as much as I like where the Pirates are going, what they're doing, this year is going to be ugly for them. And that's okay. Josh Bell is going to have to take a lot of criticism this year because he's not able to do things that he's not in a position to succeed at. He's not going to be able to drive in runs if there's nobody in base in front of him. He's not going to be able to hit for average if pitchers know they don't have to pitch to him. That's why I have Bell ranked a little bit lower. Now, this time next year, when a guy like Cabrian Haynes is called up, when a guy like Kevin Newman has another year of established major league consistency, when those guys start to come into play, that changes things a little bit. For this year right now, 83 is too high for a guy like Josh Bell. A guy I love, and you guys that know me know I love to project. Miguel Sano, last year at 26 years old, hit 247, 34 homers, 76 runs, 79 RBIs. Again, at 26 years old, his ADP is 116. But here's the thing about Miguel Sano. That's a 10th round value, by the way. He did those 34 homers, those 79 RBIs, and those 76 runs in 104 games. 104 games. That's 2/3 of the season. Project that out, and I know you guys love this. Project that out. That's 52 homers. That's 117 runs and 122 RBIs. And you're talking about a 10th round pick? He's moving from third to first this year with the addition of Donaldson. He'll have extra protection with Donaldson there. And he's going to hit in the middle of an absolutely packed Twins lineup. Last year, he hit 291 with 12 homers out of the 7-hole. You really have to even in that Twins lineup, and that's so he hit in the 5th and the 7th hole. He liked both of them. You have to think this year with the addition of Donaldson, he's going to spend a lot of time in that 7-hole where he was almost a 300 hitter. You got to love what he brings to the table. And again, at 26 years old, the potential is there. Okay? I want to talk about, before I get into this third tier and before I jump off of here, okay, I want to go through these guys fairly fast because there's about 20 players here that this speaks to the depth at this position. And this is why you need to do this, because it enhances how you want to attack these drafts if and when we come back to an established timeline of real baseball and all that stuff. The names on this list from 25 to whatever, 40, 45 is what I have. I have 45 players on here. You're still talking about really quality players, okay? And honestly, good. A lot of these guys are good values. I'm going to run through some names. I'm going to talk about a few guys as they pique my interest. This next grouping of guys, you'll see some commonalities. Tommy Edman is the first one. His ADP is 137. He hit 304 last year. 11 homers, 59 runs, 36 stolen bases. He had 15 stolen bases. 15 stolen bases. That's important. That's important, okay? Because he's not – the reason why it's important is because he's not killing you in the other categories. He's not killing you with runs. He's not killing you with RBIs. He's not killing you with average. As a matter of fact, he's a benefit in average at 304, okay? His ADP is at what, 14th round? That's a good value. I have Turner at 26. His ADP is 151. He hit 290 last year, 27 homers, 80 runs, 67 RBIs. This is a guy at 35 years old. You know what you're going to get. When you draft Turner, you're not drafting him for upside. You're drafting him to fill out a roster spot to give you certain statistics. I'm not saying not do it. I'm just saying there's sexier picks out there. I've had Turner on plenty of my teams in years past. 26, I feel if you're looking at a corner infielder, that's fair, right? Jeff McNeil. The more, I'm I love Jeff McNeil. He brings a lot of things to the table. The average in particular, 318. He's the fourth among the corner infielders. He's second, third, and outfield eligible, so he's really versatile. But here's the thing I can't get past. His ADP is 85. To me, he doesn't give you any elite numbers with an ADP of 85. I feel like he's a bit overvalued there. But that said, he brings you the average is established. If he can give you 20 homers, you're happy, right? I question that. That's my only thing. And the reason why I do this, if you go 100 picks later, Scott Kingery might not give you quite the average, but he's not killing your average, and he gives you a complete skill set. I love Edman. I'll tell you, I had him in Stratomatic. I don't like to talk about Stratomatic on this. I had to give him up because he was a $5 million investment, and I was just trying to make my team better. But I'll tell you, that guy is he brings a lot to the table at a number of different positions. The Cardinals have done a good job with this kid. I really like him. But Kingery's another one that I really like, and is yeah, 5 point whatever it was, and I loved having him, George. But it was just I could use that capital elsewhere, so I had to let him go. Kingery at 258, 19 homers and 15 stolen bases. He's just 26 years old. People forget. Yeah, position eligibility is right for Edman, but for Kingery as well. Third base, shortstop, and outfield eligible. That center field, if you're in a position dependent league, it is pretty valuable for a guy that's that brings some power to the table. Being able to shuffle him in and out of different positions is important. I think the 258 is a floor for him. I think that goes up a bit. But you're talking about a guy here who's got 2020 potential. Is going to score a shitload of runs in that potent Philly offense. And I think, you can plug him into a number of different places. The next guy who I love, and I've talked about this guy all year. I've talked about him with Arnie. I've talked about him pretty much anywhere I can. I love Miguel Andujar. I'm going to give you his 2018 stats. He did this as a 23-year-old rookie. He's just 25 years old. He had 297 with 27 homers, 83 runs, and 92 RBIs as a 23-year-old at Yankee Stadium. He ran into an issue last year with I can't remember, pectorals, whatever it was. It doesn't matter. I don't have that. I don't care about that shit. But it basically cost him the whole year. But I don't want to look at last year's stats. I want to look at the year when he was healthy and what the potential that he brings to the table. You're talking about another one of those guys that, albeit right now he's not multi-position flexible, he will be. They're planning on playing him in left field, especially with Judge still being hurt, especially with Stanton, constantly hurt. They're talking about him playing in the outfield some. You're talking about a guy here who might be third base, left field eligible. And to have those sorts of numbers, this guy is a 290 plus hitter. This guy is a 30 potential homer guy. Hitting in the middle of a very potent Yankee lineup. He trumps guys like Tauchman and guys like some of those other Voit rather, some of those other middle tier type Yankee hitters, because he just has more freaking potential. So I love Miguel Andujar, again with an ADP of 216. I think he's a steal. His ADP earlier in the year when I was talking about him was in the 400s. He's risen that far. I still think this is a value, even at 216. You're talking about getting him after the 15th round. I am all on board with that. Okay. And it speaks to the value of this position, how deep it really is. And I'll go even deeper here because these next tier guys, Goldschmidt, Carlos Santana, Danny Santana, all of these guys have proven, Danny Santana aside, have proven to be established major league hitters. Carlos Santana at 116, love him again at 34 years old. Danny Santana at 133, I first, second, and outfield eligible, 29 years old. He had 21 stolen bases last year. Santana is one of those guys, Andrew. That's a great point. 110 runs last year, was sixth among the category. He's one of those guys that's unsung, and he loves Cleveland. He loves playing in Cleveland. He loves playing in Cleveland. He is what he is. He's going to give you good power numbers. He's going to get on base a ton. He's going to score a lot of runs. He's not going to hurt you in average. Carlos Santana is a really good steal. Malpal says he's all in on Goldie. And I'll tell you, I think it's interesting, right? Because again, at 67, that's the jump off point for me, Malpal, with Goldie, is at 67 ADP. You have to spend so much more draft capital than you do a Carlos Santana, than you do a Rhys Hoskins, than you do a Miguel Andujar. That's where I have issue with it. But the potential's there. I totally agree with you there. This guy put up MVP type numbers. He has shown long periods of time, just like Jose Ramirez, has shown long spurts where he can dominate the game. He just hasn't done it in St. Louis yet, right? To round out this category, because I do want to talk a little bit about some of these other guys. Ryan McMahon, I have as the 33rd corner infielder. Again, first, second, third base eligible. He's one of those guys in Colorado who looks like he's on the verge of stardom. 24 homers, 83 RBIs, 5 stolen bases. Again, the position flexibility. You got to like McMahon. I have him above Rhys Hoskins, who I have at 34. Again, McMahon's a 196. Hoskins is a 111. So, not to keep belaboring the point, it's important to make these lists and know who you value where, right? Rhys Hoskins, 226 last year, 29 homers, 86 RBIs. 86 runs, 85 RBIs. I worry about his consistency. He should have a little better year with the average this year, but at 27 years old, given the chance between McMahon and Hoskins, I will take McMahon every time. That's why it's important to be tactical about making these lists, right? And then the last two I have in this category are Hunter Dozier and Luis Arias. I like Arias because he's kind of the poor man's Jeff McNeil. He's going just under 280 ADP spots lower than McNeil, but he led the category in average last year at 334. Only 4 homers, so he's going to give you, he's not going to give you a whole lot of power. He's not going to give you a whole lot but if you're looking for an average plug-in, which, let's be honest, that's what McNeil was initially, Arias is – well, and that's a great point. So Malpal says McMahon over Hoskins because of cost or ability. I'm going to say both, and I'm going to throw in potential, Malpal. So we've kind of seen what Hoskins can do. He's 27 years old. We've kind of seen that, he's going to hit some homers, but he's going to strike out a lot. His average isn't going to carry you. The thing I like about McMahon is opportunity. It all comes down to opportunity. You're talking about McMahon in a homer-friendly park. You're talking about McMahon in a relatively low-pressure situation. And you're talking about a kid who, let's be honest, you haven't seen the best of yet. He's established everyday playing time. albeit he hasn't established an everyday position. They're going to play him at first, second, or third. He's established that he's been successful in a part-time role. Colorado is in a position where they need everyday players and they need this kid to be successful. So they're going to put him in position to be successful. That's why I value. And you throw on top of all of that the fact that he's going 84 draft positions lower. It all comes down to tactics, right? That's why McMahon over Hoskins for me personally. So yeah, and that's where it comes down. The sum of all parts, right? So where he's taken, his offensive environment, potential, and what he's shown you. I take McMahon over Hoskins every time. That's just me. So I don't have a fourth. So we've been through 3 tiers, right? We've been the first 12, second 12. That's our third 12. I want to go in. I don't have a fourth 12. I got a fourth 8. But again, speaking to this depth at the corner infield position, I think is important. Here we are at corner infield of 37, and we're talking about players like Yuli Gurriel. We're talking about players like Starlin Castro. These guys have a ton of potential. J.D. Davis, Christian Walker. I love Christian Walker. Artie talks a lot about Starlin Castro, and he's absolutely right. Starlin Castro's career has been pretty impressive. He's only 30 years old. His ADP is 236. But given the two, I like Christian Walker. Christian Walker at 201. Last year got his first time full opportunity as a starter. He hit 259, 29 homers, 86 runs, 73 RBIs, and 8 stolen bases out of Christian Walker. So, again, 201, you're looking at 18th, 19th round. You're talking about a value. You're talking about a guy who's either a corner infielder or one of your predominant bench spots. I love this guy at this position. I'm all in this year on Christian Walker. You look at last year, they had a guy like Kevin Cron, who was a big-time prodigious power guy at AAA Reno, I think it was. And when Walker got dinged up, they didn't give his position away. So he's pretty set in where he's going to bat, what he's going to do. I think, again, the 259, 29, 86, 73, I really think this is a good value in the late teens round, right? Another guy I love at 273, Renato Nunez, as just a 26-year-old ball player, hit 244 with 31 homers, 72 runs, and 90 RBIs last year, again, as a 26-year-old. He has no reason not to be supplanted as a middle of the lineup guy for the Orioles. And I'll tell you, George, I was on Kevin Cron so hard last year. But they like Walker, and I'll tell you, I see why. It's funny. I picked up Cron in my personal league last year. Spent way more than I should have on him, but only to sit there and watch in bewilderment as Walker reclaimed the spot. And I was able to reclaim Walker because he got dropped when he was injured. So I had Walker and Cron both on my team. I like them both. But Walker's pretty well planted at that first base spot in Arizona. It would take a pretty significant drop off in his part for him to lose playing time to Kevin Cron. Nunez, I love in the middle of that Orioles lineup, but I Dave's laughing at me, and you know what I mean. It's one of those things. But I'll tell you, Dave. It's funny because, again, I kind of backed myself up in picking up Walker, right? Because he ended up winning that position back. And that's how you kind of have to approach these things. You have to have the plan B mindset in the back of your head. So getting Walker was a good thing for me, right? The one other guy I really want to talk about, and this is just because someone brought him up earlier. Nunez is all fine and dandy. The guy I really want to talk about this corner, and this is the last guy I'm going to talk about tonight. Ryan Mountcastle. This is a guy who really has a lot of potential to step in for an injured Trey Mancini. We're talking about a guy who last year, as I try and stall as I pull it up. Last year, he really kind of established himself as an average hitter, and he's always been a power hitter, okay? But he established himself as an average hitter in AAA Norfolk, where he hit 312 and 25 homers, 83 RBIs, 81 runs. He's ready for the big leagues. The Orioles have taken their time with him. They've let him come up through the system. He's 23 years old this year. I think Mount Powell, he has taken a long time to develop, but I don't think that's a bad thing, especially if you look at his last 2 years in the minor leagues. So in 2018 at Double-A, he hit 297. Last year at Triple-A, he hit 312. I think this guy is more of a average homer combination than maybe we're giving him credit for. I think the Orioles just needed to see him grow into his maturity. I look for him this year to carry maybe not a 300 average at the major league level, but I look for him to carry a high average. I look for him to be productive in the home run and RBI category. I look for him to take over that kind of young leadership role that Mancini has taken over this last couple of years. I really think, again, at ADP 400 something, it's low. This guy is a good value and is a good draft investment. So, it's fun because, again, I say this all the time. That's the important thing about doing this is distinguishing who you value over whom and why. Again, at 400, Mountcastle is a freebie. He's a throw-in. He's pretty much assured everyday playing time in the current Orioles system because of the injury of Mancini. And I think he's ready to produce. So there you have it. I've given you guys 46, 40. I won't say 46 because I skimmed over a couple of other guys. 40 players that are draftable at this corner infield position. So I appreciate you guys hanging out with me. I'm Chappy. Chapp's Fantasy Chat comes to you on Tuesday nights at 7 on the Lenny Melnick Fantasy Sports Network at LennyMelnickFantasySports.com. I want to thank everybody I've had in the chat room tonight. This Zoom thing is interesting because it's you get a little bit of legs with Spreaker, and you start getting an audience, and then you start all over when you change platforms. That's fine because I do like having the personal aspect of being in front of a camera and kind of showing you guys that I'm working off playlists, right? This is my categories. This is my whiskey. It's my second bottle gone. But anyway, it's been fun. Chapp's Fantasy Chat Tuesday nights at 7 on the Lenny Melnick Fantasy Sports Network at LennyMelnickFantasySports.com. I appreciate y'all being here. Dave Craig, Lenny Melnick, Andrew Lamont, Mal Powell, Trader Jim, thanks for coming by tonight, brother. Appreciate you. Vic, Vishal, appreciate you. This is all fun, and the more you guys that come in and interact, it just makes it more interesting than that you have support, all that stuff. So we are going to play, guys. I don't know for how long or in what role, but we're gonna get there. So make your list, fine tune this shit because it's gonna show up when you go to draft in June when all this comes back about. It's gonna show up if you have your list available. They're fine tuned. You know who you like over whom and why. It pays off in the end. So take the time to do this. It is important. Chappy, Pirates fan, Cubs fan, Durham Bulls fan, Crash Davis. Anyway, Tuesday night, 7 p.m. Chat. Thank you guys. Have a good night. Take care. Bye.